We were live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's Voice to the World. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken meets Tayyip Erdogan at Ankara as forces backed by US-Turkey clash in Syria. NATO must switch to a wartime mindset, says its chief. Mark Rutte calls for much higher defense spending to counter Russia. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to inaugurate and launch multiple development projects worth around 55 crore rupees at northern India's city of Prayagraj today. Grateful Nation remembers the martyrs on the 23rd anniversary of terrorist attack on Parliament, programme to be held in Parliament House complex in honour of brave security personnel. And in sports, India's DD Gukesh dethrones Dingley and becomes world's youngest chess champion. President Draupadi Murmu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi hail remarkable feat. And on to the details now. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Turkey on Thursday for talks focused on establishing stability in Syria. Blinken met President Tayyip Erdogan at Ankara's Esenboga airport after visiting Jordan on his first trip to the region since Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government was ousted on Sunday. Erdogan and Blinken discussed the latest developments in Syria, with Erdogan calling on the international community to work together for the reconstruction of institutions in Syria. Erdogan also told Blinken that Turkey would take preventive measures in Syria for its national security against all organizations it deems as terrorist, adding that Ankara would not allow any weakness in the fight against Islamic State. Blinken noted the shared interest of the US and Turkey in supporting a Syrian-led political transition to an accountable and inclusive government. Blinken will meet Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan on Friday. And NATO head Mark Rutte has warned the US-led transatlantic alliance on Thursday that it was not ready for the threats it would face from Russia in the coming years, and called for a shift to a wartime mindset with much higher defense spending. Rutte said NATO members had spent more than 3% of GDP on defense during the Cold War, and future spending would have to be much higher than the current alliance target of 2%.
We are not ready for what is coming our way in 4 to 5 years. Danger is moving towards us at full speed. We can prevent the next big war on NATO territory and preserve our way of life. This requires us all to be faster and fiercer. It is time to shift to a wartime mindset and turbocharge our defense production and defense spending.
Well, the United States announced a new $500 million package of military aid for Ukraine on Thursday as Washington races to bolster Kyiv before President-elect Donald Trump takes office. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the United States is providing another significant package of urgently needed weapons and equipment to Ukraine from U.S. military stockpiles. The package, worth about $500 million, included ammunition for high-mobility artillery, rocket systems, and high-speed anti-radiation missiles, among other assistance. The $5.6 billion in presidential drawdown authority provides Biden with significant flexibility in directing additional military aid to Ukraine without needing congressional approval. While the White House reaffirmed that the U.S. would continue to provide additional packages for Ukraine right up to the end of Biden's administration.
That also today the President approved a new security assistance package for Ukraine that will provide them with additional air defense, artillery, drones, and armored vehicles. It's the 72nd such drawdown package announced by the United States, and as the President made clear, we're going to continue to provide additional packages right up to the end of this administration.
Well, U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday released a long-awaited strategy for countering anti-Muslim and anti-Arab hate up sharply since the start of the Israel-Gaza conflict, calling for urgent, continued work to reduce discrimination and bias. The 64-page document comes weeks before the inauguration of former President Donald Trump, who imposed a travel ban on people from some majority Muslim countries during his first term that Biden decided on his first day in office. It mirrors a comprehensive strategy to fight anti-Semitism released by the White House in September 2023 and comes more than a year after the death of 6-year-old boy Wadia Al-Fayom, stabbed by a man who targeted him and his mother because they were Palestinian American. In a foreword to the strategy, Biden called the attacks on the Chicago boy and his mother heinous acts and noted a spike in anti-Muslim and anti-Arab hate crimes, discrimination and bullying that he called wrong and unacceptable. Biden also wrote that policies that result in discrimination against entire communities are wrong and fail to keep Americans safe. The Council on American-Islamic Relations called the strategy too little, too late, while the Trump transition team had no immediate comment on the strategy or whether it would support it. An outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden has issued presidential pardons to 39 Americans convicted of non-violent crimes and commuted the sentences of nearly 1,500 other people. The White House released a pardon list of 39 people that said the individuals had committed either a non-violent offensive or a non-violent drug offense. In 1,499 commuted sentences includes individuals who were placed in home confinement during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as those whose sentences Biden deemed to be too long due to outdated laws. The White House described it as the most acts of presidential clemency issued in a single day. The moves come over a week after the president signed an unconditional pardon for his son Hunter. Biden said the people he granted clemency would have received shorter sentences if charged under today's laws, policies and practices. The president added that he will take more steps in the weeks ahead and that his administration will continue reviewing clemency petitions. Well, the Time magazine on Thursday named U.S. President-elect Donald Trump its Person of the Year, citing his deep impact on American politics and the country's role in the world. The news magazine had previously bestowed the Person of the Year title to Trump in 2016 after his first presidential election victory. It named Democratic President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris Person of the Year in 2020 after they defeated Trump. Pop star Taylor Swift received the title last year. The latest Person of the Year issue features a wide-ranging interview with Trump conducted on November 25th at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. To commemorate the Time selection, Trump rang the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange, where he was joined by Kennedy, wife Melania, daughters Ivanka and Tiffany, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and Scott Bessent, Trump's pick for Treasury Secretary. The bell ringing signifies the start of the trading day at the world's largest stock exchange and is considered an honor. It was historically been reserved for company executives celebrating an initial public offering or other major corporate milestones, but celebrities and politicians like Ronald Reagan, Nelson Mandela and Arnold Schwarzenegger have also rung it. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron has postponed the nomination of a new Prime Minister until Friday morning. 8 days after French MPs ousted Michel Barnier as Prime Minister in a no-confidence vote, Macron cut short a visit to Poland on Thursday and had been expected to come up with a new name on his return. Macron said 2 days ago he wanted to name a new head of government within 48 hours. The new team is due to replace the one led by Michel Barnier, who resigned last week after far-right and leftist lawmakers voted to topple his government. Macron has vowed to remain in office until his second term ends in 2027, despite Barnier's downfall last week. And moving on, thousands of workers and supporters flooded the streets of Paris to protest against the growing number of redundancy plans and jobs losses affecting the French workforce. The demonstration, organized by prominent labor unions such as the General Confederation of Labour, Solidaires and the FSU, comes in response to a worsening economic situation marked by significant layoffs, restructuring and the dismantling of industrial sectors, marked by an upsurge in redundancy plans. The protesters are demanding urgent government action to protect jobs and support workers in industries facing decline. While pro-European Union protesters take to the streets for the 15th consecutive day in Tbilisi, and Georgians rally against the newly elected Georgian government they consider illegitimate, protesting the government's decision to delay European Union membership talks amid a post-election crisis. The unrest in the region begins after Prime Minister's announcement on Thursday that Georgia would not seek accession talks with the EU until 2028, ignited a furious reaction from the opposition. Chaotic scenes unfolded for hours as police chased defiant protesters through the streets of central Tbilisi, beating them and making arrests. And even when Iran is hard-pressed due to Israel's offensive against Hezbollah and Hamas, many European countries feel Khamenei-led country use this situation to develop nuclear weapons capabilities. This may trigger further sanctions against Iran. Britain, France and Germany have raised the possibility of restoring sanctions against Iran to keep it from developing its nuclear program. In a letter to the UN Security Council, these three countries, known as the E3, say they may use all diplomatic tools to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, including using sanctions if necessary. The letter mentioned that Iran must de-escalate its nuclear program to create the political environment conducive to meaningful progress and a negotiated solution. Iran has increased its production of uranium enriched to 60% on its way to the 90% needed to make a nuclear weapon. The Security Council is scheduled to address the Iranian nuclear issue next week. Representatives of the E3 in Iran met in Geneva last month and agreed to keep talking. Well, Moldova's parliament voted early on Friday to impose a national state of emergency for 60 days, starting on December 16 due to an expected cutoff of Russian gas supplies from January 1st. 56 members in the 101-seat chamber backed the measures in the vote just after midnight, following Prime Minister Dorin Racin's call for approval. Declaring a state of emergency allows the government to respond rapidly and curb energy exports. Moldova receives Russian natural gas via Ukraine, which has said it will not extend its transit contract with Russian gas giant. And Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is recovering positively from his latest surgery on Thursday. Lula underwent a second procedure on Thursday following his emergency surgery earlier this week to relieve bleeding in his skull. The president had an intracranial drain removed without complications and remains in ICU, doctors informed, adding he was lucid and speaking normally as he received family visits. President Lula will remain in intensive care and is expected to be discharged from Sao Paulo's Syrio-Lebanese hospital early next week, when he might resume his presidential activities. Well, Venezuelan authorities said on Thursday that they have released 103 people this week who had been arrested amid anti-government protest following last July's contested presidential election. The detainees were accused of terrorism and taken to maximum security jails after a crackdown following the re-election of Maduro. The government announced that more than 300 people have been released from prison arrested in protest against the re-election of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Over 2,400 people were arrested during the unrest after the July 28th vote, which left at least 28 dead and nearly 200 injured. Maduro, who is to be sworn into office next month for a third six-year term, requested a review of the arrest following his re-election. Protests have largely petered out since September, when opposition leader González Urrutia went into exile in Spain after a warrant was issued for his arrest. And moving on, the United States welcomed the accord reached by Somalia and Ethiopia to end regional tensions sparked by Addis Ababa's push for maritime access. The two countries had been at loggerheads since landlocked Ethiopia struck a deal in January with Somalia's breakaway region of Somaliland to release a stretch of coastline for a port and military base. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken added Washington was looking forward to the technical negotiations that would spell out Ethiopia's sea access while respecting Somalia's territorial integrity. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Lion cubs at London Zoo received a festive early Christmas treat this week, delighting in gifts designed to stimulate their senses. 9-month-old cubs Mali, Siani and Shanti, who are experiencing their first Christmas, were given special presents infused with a sense of frankincense and myrrh. These cubs responded enthusiastically, sniffing and pawing at the gifts as they explored their new fragrant surroundings. BAFTA-winning actor Jude Law received the 27,800th star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Jude Law has been a prominent figure in Hollywood for over 2 decades, known for his remarkable range in both film and television. His career boasts a variety of critically acclaimed roles, from his breakthrough performance in The Talented Mr. Ripley to his work in major franchises such as Sherlock Holmes and Fantastic Beasts. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. Well, we'll tell you about what all is expected to transpire in the winter session of Indian Parliament today. European Central Bank cuts interest rates for 4th time since June. Deposit rates lowered to 3% from 3.25%. An Indian hockey team thrashes Thailand to reach semi-finals of Women's Junior Asia Cup.
We are going to be talking about India's pivotal comprehensive strategic partnership with a key country in the Indo-Pacific, Australia.
I think Australia has really benefited from India's shift towards multi-alignment.
And I think India and Australia have a really strong ability to try and keep trade free and democratic values flowing in the Indian Ocean.
I think that our Indigenous culture in Australia, which is super important to recognise, has a lot of ties to Indian culture and philosophy.
Some of my best friends in Australia are Indian, and they have shown me the best side of humanity, I think.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Vipakshi Kuran, and moving on, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, Parvati Neni Harish, addressed the UN Security Council on Afghanistan. Highlighting India's relations with Afghanistan, he asserted that India is actively engaged in regional and international efforts to maintain stability and peace in Afghanistan.
India is closely monitoring the situation in Afghanistan and has been actively engaged in regional and international efforts to maintain stability and peace in Afghanistan. Our broad approach remains to provide humanitarian and development assistance to the people of Afghanistan and to create an international consensus under the UN framework to resolve various issues between the de facto authorities in Afghanistan and the international community. Our participation in the UN meetings in Doha, in the Moscow format and other fora are a reflection of our efforts to secure peace, stability and development in Afghanistan.
And India's Prime Minister Modi on Thursday welcomed Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of UAE Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan in a meeting. Both the leaders emphasized strengthening India-UAE comprehensive strategic partnerships, including in the areas of technology, energy and people-to-people ties. Furthermore, PM Modi laid a special emphasis on the implementation of the India-Middle East-Europe corridor to foster regional connectivity and prosperity. He also expressed his optimism about the future of the India-UAE comprehensive strategic partnership. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Prayagraj, a city in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh, to inspect the development works for Mahakumbh Mela 2025. Prime Minister will inaugurate and launch multiple development projects worth around 5,500 crore rupees at Prayagraj. He will inaugurate various projects for Mahakumbh 2025, including rail and road projects. In line with his commitment towards Swachh and Nirmal Ganga, Prime Minister will also inaugurate projects related to it. He'll also inaugurate various infrastructure projects related to drinking water and power. Prime Minister will also inaugurate major temple corridors to ensure ease of access to devotees and also boost spiritual tourism. While India remembers the martyrs who sacrificed their lives while defending Parliament House from dastardly terror attacks on this day in 2001, Indian political leaders will pay tributes to the security personnel martyred during the Parliament attack in the Parliament House today. December 13, 2001 marks the dark day when 5 terrorists guided by Pakistan claimed the lives of at least 9 people, including 6 security personnel, 2 Parliament Security Service personnel and a gardener, in an attack on the heart of democracy, the Indian Parliament, now known as Samvidhan Sadan. And the daily proceedings of the winter session of Indian Parliament resume today with important bills tabled for discussion. The upper house of the Parliament to take up private member legislative business, while the lower house of Lok Sabha to take readjustment of representation of scheduled tribes in assembly constituencies of the State of Goa Bill 2024 for consideration and passing. Discussion on the glorious journey of 75 years of the Indian Constitution also to be held. And now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Vaishno Devi Shrine in Jammu and Kashmir sees over 90 lakh devotees for third straight year. As per the authorities, over 95 lakh devotees had visited the shrine in 2023. The Chief Executive Officer of the Shrine Board that efforts are underway to provide more facilities for the devotees and that the footfall in Katra will increase with the improvement in connectivity. 7 people, including a child, lost their lives in a fire at a private hospital in India's Chennai on Thursday. The incident took place on Thursday night at the City Hospital on Trichy Road. Initial investigations by the police suggest the fire may have been caused by an electrical short circuit. And on to some business news now. The European Central Bank cut interest rates for the 4th time this year on Thursday and kept the door open to further easing ahead as inflation continues to cool. The latest round of cuts sees the deposit rate, the ECB's main rate, fall to 3%. The ECB's rate setting council has been reduced its main lending rate, off of which tracker mortgages are priced at the same pace, to 3.15%. ECB President Christine Lagarde described as uncertainty in abundance. Lagarde said the policymakers settled unanimously on 25 basis points, taking the ECB's deposit rate to 3%. The central bank also removed an earlier reference in its guidance to keeping interest rates sufficiently restrictive to 3.0% from 3.25%. It was at a record 4% only in June. With Thursday's decision, the ECB also cut the rate at which it lends to banks for 1 week to 3.15% and for 1 day to 3.40%. And on to some sports news. India's Grandmaster Gukesh has scripted history by becoming the youngest ever chess champion. Gukesh defeated Ging Liren of China in the decisive game 14 of the World Chess Championship in Singapore to clinch the title. With the game heading towards another draw, defending champions Ding made a blunder to hand the Indian Grandmaster victory. 18-year-old Gukesh has become the youngest world champion, beating the record previously held by Garry Kasparov. He's also the second world champion from India after Vishwanathan Anand, who won the title 4 times. An Indian hockey team has progressed to semi-finals of Women's Junior Asia Cup after they thrashed Thailand 9-0 in the 4th pool match in Muscat. Deepika Kumari stole the show with an impressive 4 goals, while Kanika Sivach delivered a hat-trick to seal the win. India started the game strong, dominated the possession and continued with their scoring spree. Thailand players were unable to fend off attacks, resulting in the lopsided encounter. India will next face Japan in the semi-finals on December 14th. They've also sealed a spot in the next year's Junior World Cup to be held in Chile. And a Kathak dance recital was organized on the banks of the scenic Feva Lake in Pokhara, Nepal. Kathak dance recital by troupe from India and Pokhara has strengthened cultural bridge between India and Nepal. India and Nepal share long-standing civilizational and cultural bonds which have served to unite the people of both nations. The recital was attended by a large number of people from all walks of life, including tourists. And India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati has recently launched Waves, entering the field of OTT platform. Waves provide a complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. If you also want great content for free, then download Waves today. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.